Get out, rookie.
Corporal Jake Brennan didn't say it quietly. He said it loud enough for every Marine in Camp Pendleton's mess hall to hear, then drove his fist into Chief Petty Officer Sarah Callahan's jaw before she could turn around. The crack echoed off cinder block walls. She went down hard, blood spreading across government-issue linoleum from her split lip. Brennan stood over her, 26 years old and convinced he owned the room. What he couldn't see was the scar behind her left ear from a Taliban fighter's knife. What he didn't know was that the 52-year-old woman bleeding at his feet had spent 18 years with DevGru, SEAL Team 6, killing people in places that don't exist on maps. If you've ever been underestimated because of your age or dismissed because of how you look, this story is for you. Subscribe now and stay until the end to see what happens when someone finally pushes back. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's find out what Brennan just started. Sarah tasted copper and felt her back teeth shift. The pain came sharp and immediate, but her hands didn't move toward her face. They moved toward her sides, positioning, calculating distances and angles. 3 seconds. That's how long it would take to dislocate Brennan's knee, collapse his windpipe, and put him on the floor unconscious. 3 seconds to end this. She chose not to. "You hearing me, Navy?" Brennan's voice came from above, thick with something that wanted to be authority, but sounded like fear trying to wear a uniform. "I asked you a question." Sarah pushed herself up slowly, keeping her movements deliberate. The mess hall had gone completely silent. 60 Marines stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped existing, except to watch. She could feel their eyes cataloging everything. The blood on her chin, the way she moved, whether she'd cry, or fight, or break. She did none of those things. "I heard you," she said. Her voice came out level, almost gentle. That seemed to make Brennan angrier. "Then answer. What's a washed-up squid doing taking up space in a Marine mess hall?" He stepped closer, invading the distance that made most people flinch. Sarah didn't move. "You lost, Grandma? Need directions back to the nursing home?" 2 Marines behind Brennan laughed. Not real laughter, the kind that comes from people who need to prove they're on the winning side. Sarah recognized them from the previous week. Lance Corporals Daniels and Park. Young, hungry for validation, willing to follow anyone who seemed certain about anything. "I'm assigned here," Sarah said simply. She reached for a napkin, pressed it against her lip. The bleeding was already slowing. She'd had worse. So much worse that this barely registered except as an inconvenience. "Assigned." Brennan drew the word out like it tasted bad. "Yeah, I've seen your assignment. Administrative coordination. That's code for too old to do real work anymore, isn't it?" Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. Not anger. She'd learned to bury that years ago. Something else. The pressure that came from holding back when every instinct screamed to respond. Her therapist at the VA called it hypervigilance. Sarah called it staying alive long enough to get home. "If you say so," she said. That was the wrong answer. Brennan's face flushed red. "I do say so. And I say you need to learn your place. This is a Marine Corps base, not some Navy country club where you can just—" "Corporal Brennan." The new voice cut through the mess hall like a blade. Staff Sergeant Maria Reyes stood near the serving line, her face unreadable. She was 38, compact and efficient, with the kind of presence that made people stand straighter without being told. "You need something?" Brennan's jaw worked. "Just having a conversation, Staff Sergeant." "Looks more like assault to me." Reyes walked closer, her boots measuring out each step with precision. "Chief Callahan, You need medical? Sarah shook her head. I'm fine, Staff Sergeant. You sure? Because I can call PMO right now, get the military police involved, make this official. The mess hall got quieter somehow. Brennan's face shifted through several expressions before settling on something between defiance and calculation. She's fine, he said. Just a misunderstanding. Didn't look like a misunderstanding. Reyes stopped 3 feet away. Looked like you hit a senior petty officer in front of 60 witnesses. I didn't, Brennan started, then stopped. His eyes flicked to Sarah, back to Reyes. It was an accident. An accident? Reyes's tone suggested she'd heard better lies from recruits. Chief Callahan, was it an accident? Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down. She could end this, now. One word, and Brennan would face charges. Assault on a superior, conduct unbecoming, maybe even battery depending on how hard the JAG wanted to push. His career would crater before it even started. But she'd made herself a promise 18 months ago, standing over a flag-draped coffin at Arlington. No more violence. No more being a weapon. Just quiet administrative work until her 20 years were up and she could disappear completely. It was an accident, she said. Reyes stared at her for a long moment. Something passed behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or disappointment. You sure about that, Chief? Positive, Staff Sergeant. All right, then. Reyes turned to Brennan. You apologize to the Chief. Right now. Brennan's mouth opened, closed. The red in his face deepened. I'm sorry, he said, but the words came out mechanical, empty. He wasn't sorry. He was cornered. Better, Reyes said. Now get out of here before I change my mind about making this official. Brennan left fast, Daniels and Park trailing behind like remoras following a shark. The mess hall stayed quiet for another 10 seconds, then conversation started up again, carefully avoiding what everyone had just witnessed. Reyes sat down across from Sarah. You want to tell me why you just did that? Did what? Protected someone who deserves to have his career ended. Sarah pressed the napkin against her lip again. The bleeding had stopped completely now. Didn't seem worth the paperwork. Bullshit. Reyes kept her voice low, conversational. I've been doing this 15 years, Chief. I know the difference between someone avoiding conflict and someone who's choosing not to hurt someone. You chose. Sarah didn't respond. She picked up her water glass, took a careful sip. Her jaw ached where Brennan's fist had connected. Not broken, just bruised. She'd reset a Marine's dislocated shoulder with worse pain than this. I did a tour in Helmand, Reyes said quietly. 2019. Worked with some Navy people attached to special operations units. They moved different than regular sailors. Had this way of watching everything without seeming to watch anything. She paused. You move like them. Sarah's hand tightened on the water glass. I work in administrative coordination. So your file says. Funny thing though, I tried to look up your previous assignments. Everything before 6 weeks ago is redacted. Whole sections just blacked out. Reyes leaned forward slightly. Why would a supply clerk need that kind of security clearance? You'd have to ask the people who wrote my file. I'm asking you. Sarah met her eyes. Reyes had good instincts, the kind that kept people alive in bad situations. She deserved honesty, but honesty meant questions Sarah couldn't answer without violating federal law and the non-disclosure agreement she'd signed in blood and consequence. I appreciate your concern, Staff Sergeant, but I'm fine. Reyes studied her face like she was reading a tactical map. Okay, she said finally. But when this blows up, and it will blow up, because Brennan's type always escalates. You come find me. Understood? Understood. Reyes left. Sarah sat alone with her cold food and the weight of every Marine trying not to stare at her. Her hands trembled slightly. Not fear, muscle memory. Her body recognized threat response, wanted to activate training that had been drilled into her across 18 years and 4 continents. She forced her hands still, breathed, counted backwards from 10 the way her therapist taught her. This wasn't Mosul. This wasn't the compound where Commander Lisa Torres had thrown herself on a grenade. This wasn't the 3-mile carry through enemy territory with Torres's body growing cold against her chest. This was Camp Pendleton, California, Tuesday afternoon. A mess hall full of Marines who didn't know who she was, or what she'd done, or why her service record read like a redacted fever dream. She needed to keep it that way. Sarah finished her water, dumped her untouched food, and walked out into harsh California sunlight. The base looked peaceful. Marines jogging past, trucks moving supplies, the normal rhythm of military life that continued regardless of individual chaos. Her phone buzzed. Text message from a number without a name. Heard about the incident. You okay? Sarah stared at the message. Only 3 people had this number. 1 was dead. 1 was the DevGru commanding officer she'd served under. 1 was the therapist at the VA who specialized in operators who couldn't talk about what they'd done. She typed back, "Fine, just a misunderstanding." The response came immediately. Misunderstandings don't leave blood on the floor. Call if you need extraction. Extraction. Military speak for getting out before things went bad. Sarah almost laughed. She'd spent 18 years extracting high-value targets from hostile territory. Now she needed extraction from a mess hall altercation with a corporal who thought muscles made him dangerous. Her father would have found that hilarious. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Callahan, original SEAL Team 6, the man who'd trained her to shoot before she could ride a bike. He'd been dead 11 years now. Heart attack in a VA parking lot, alone, still fighting wars nobody remembered. He'd taught her 3 rules. Don't trust backup that hasn't earned trust. Don't use weapons you can't maintain. Don't become something you can't turn off. She'd broken the 3rd rule in Mosul, became exactly what the mission required. And when Torres died saving her life, Sarah hadn't been able to find the off switch. Just kept operating, kept executing, kept being a weapon until the Navy quietly suggested she take administrative duties before her psyche valves became a career-ending problem. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. This one familiar. Formation tomorrow, 0800. Mandatory attendance. Commander Hayes. Commander Vincent Hayes. Former SEAL, now Marine officer doing some kind of cross-service liaison work Sarah didn't fully understand. She'd met him once during in-processing. He'd looked at her the way Reyes had, seeing something that didn't match the paperwork. Sarah pocketed her phone and headed toward her barracks. The building was mostly empty this time of day, everyone at work or training or doing the 1,000 small tasks that kept a military base functioning. She had a small room to herself, privilege of rank, and the Navy's administrative confusion about where exactly to put a chief petty officer on a Marine base. She locked the door, sat on her rack, and pulled off her uniform top. The mirror on the wall showed her reflection. 52 years old. Gray, threading through dark hair, she kept regulation short. Lines around her eyes from squinting through desert sun and night vision optics. A scar behind her left ear where a Taliban fighter had gotten too close with a knife before she'd killed him with his own weapon. And on her left shoulder blade, covered by uniform during duty hours, a Navy SEAL trident tattoo with a number beneath it. The number didn't mean anything to most people. To Sarah, it meant everything. It was the number of confirmed kills she'd accumulated across 18 years of operations that officially never happened. 73 human beings who'd stopped existing because Sarah Callahan had been better trained, better equipped, and willing to pull triggers that most people couldn't imagine pulling. She traced the tattoo with her fingers. Torres had one just like it. They'd gotten them together in Virginia Beach after their first successful mission, a compound raid in Somalia that had saved 8 American hostages from al-Shabaab fighters. Torres had said the numbers were important, not for pride, but for remembrance. Every kill was someone's son, someone's father, someone who'd made choices that led them to the moment Sarah ended their life. Forgetting them meant treating death as casual. Torres had refused to let death be casual. Then Torres had chosen death, grabbed that grenade and compressed her body around it so Sarah and 2 other operators could keep breathing. Sarah's hands shook again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, forced them still through will and practice. Her phone rang. Not a text this time, actual call. The screen showed restricted. She almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail. But 18 years of operational discipline won out over civilian avoidance. Callahan? Chief. The voice belonged to Rear Admiral Catherine Marlowe, DEVGRU, Commanding Officer. 52, Career SEAL, one of the first women to make it through BUD/S and survive the political nightmare that followed. Heard you had an interesting day. Word travels fast. Word travels when one of my operators gets assaulted on a Marine base by someone who doesn't know who he's hitting. Marlowe's voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. You want to press charges? No, ma'am. Why not? Sarah closed her eyes. Because I made a promise to Commander Torres. I was done being operational, done hurting people. Filing charges means investigations, means my file gets pulled, means questions I can't answer without violating security protocols. Torres wanted you safe, not punished. Marlowe's tone softened slightly. She saved your life so you could live it, Sarah, not so you could hide from it. I'm not hiding. You're absolutely hiding. Administrative coordination at Camp Pendleton? You're one of the most decorated operators in DevGru history, and you're filing paperwork? It's what I need right now. Silence on the line. Then, Commander Hayes is a friend, former Team 3 guy who went Marine for reasons I don't fully understand. He called me this afternoon, said he's running a tactical evaluation starting tomorrow, said he wants you involved. Sarah's stomach tightened. As what? Observer, evaluator. He didn't specify. Marlowe paused. This Corporal Brennan who hit you? His name's on the participant list. Admiral, I'm not ordering you to do anything, Chief. I'm telling you that Hayes knows your real file, knows what you've done, and he thinks watching Brennan get evaluated by actual standards might be educational for everyone involved. I know what you don't want. I'm asking what you need. And I think you need to stop pretending you're something you're not. The line went dead. Marlowe didn't do long goodbyes. Sarah sat in the silence of her room, feeling walls press closer. Outside her window, Marines ran PT drills, voices counting cadence in rhythm that had defined military life since Rome. Her jaw throbbed where Brennan had hit her. Small pain, inconsequential really, but it had triggered something. Muscle memory, combat assessment, the automatic threat calculation that had kept her alive through situations designed to kill her. She'd promised Torres, no more violence, no more operations, no more being the weapon that ended lives in the dark. But Torres had also said something else. The night before Mosul, sitting in a safe house waiting for mission approval, drinking terrible coffee that tasted like cardboard. "You know what scares me most?" Torres had asked. "What?" "That we're so good at this we forget how to be anything else. That we become the mission instead of people who complete missions." Torres had stared into her coffee. "Promise me something, Sarah. If I don't make it back, promise you'll find a way to be human again, not a widow to this work. Just human." Sarah had promised, and Torres had died, making sure Sarah could keep that promise. But maybe being human didn't mean hiding. Maybe it meant using what she'd learned to teach others. Maybe it meant showing Corporal Jake Brennan that the 52-year-old woman he'd hit in the mess hall wasn't helpless. She was choosing mercy. Sarah pulled her phone out, typed a message to Commander Hayes. "Received notification about evaluation. Confirming attendance tomorrow 0800. The response came within seconds. "Good. We need to have a conversation about expectations." Sarah stared at those words. Expectations. She'd spent 18 years exceeding every expectation put in front of her. Now she just wanted to exist without drowning in the weight of who she'd been. But Brennan had made that impossible. He'd hit her in front of witnesses, called her washed up, treated her like she was nothing. And tomorrow, Commander Hayes was going to create a situation where truth came to light. Sarah wasn't sure if that terrified her or relieved her. Maybe both. She lay back on her rack, stared at the ceiling, and waited for dawn. The formation assembled at dawn under California sky that looked like brushed steel. Sarah stood in the back rank, hands clasped behind her back, watching Commander Vincent Hayes pace in front of 140 Marines who'd rather be anywhere else at 0800 on a Wednesday morning. Hayes was 42, built like someone who'd spent 30 years carrying heavy things across bad terrain. He had the weathered face of a man who'd seen combat and the cold eyes of someone who remembered every second of it. When he spoke, his voice carried without shouting. "Some of you think you know what standards mean," he said. "Think wearing the uniform makes you a warrior. Think deployments to safe bases count as combat experience." His gaze swept across the formation, stopped briefly on Brennan, standing 3 ranks ahead of Sarah. "You're wrong." Brennan's shoulders stiffened. Sarah could see the back of his neck flush red. "Starting today, we're running a 5-day tactical evaluation," Hayes continued. "Leadership assessment, combat skills, decision-making under pressure. Results go in your permanent files. Affect promotions, assignments, everything that matters to your careers." A ripple of tension moved through the formation. Marines shifted weight, exchanged glances. "I need 10 volunteers," Hayes said. "People who think they've got what it takes. People who want to prove they're more than talk." Silence. Nobody moved. Hayes smiled, and it wasn't friendly. "Corporal Brennan." Brennan's head snapped around. "Sir? You've been very vocal about standards on this base, about who belongs and who doesn't, about what makes a real Marine." Hayes stepped closer. "So step forward and show us." Brennan's jaw worked. Every eye in the formation was on him. Sarah could see the calculation happening: back down and look weak, or step forward into something he didn't understand. He stepped forward. "Outstanding," Hayes said. "Who else?" 7 more Marines volunteered within seconds. All junior NCOs and senior lance corporals, all trying to prove something. Hayes counted them off, then turned toward the back ranks. "Chief Petty Officer Callahan." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Sir?" "Your personnel file indicates instructor-level qualifications in small unit tactics from previous joint training assignments." Hayes's tone was conversational, but his eyes held hers with intensity that suggested he knew exactly what those joint training assignments meant. I'm requesting you participate as both evaluator and participant." The formation went completely silent. Brennan turned, his face shifting from confusion to anger in 2 seconds flat. "Sir, with respect," Brennan started. "Did I ask for your input, Corporal?" "No, sir, but then shut your mouth." Hayes's voice didn't rise, but it cut like a blade. He looked back at Sarah. "Chief, you willing?" Sarah felt the weight of 140 Marines staring at her, felt the weight of 18 years trying to stay buried, felt the weight of Torres's voice in her head saying that hiding wasn't the same as healing. "Yes, sir," she said. "Good. Everyone else dismissed. Participants report to the staging area in 15 minutes. Full combat load. We're moving out." The formation broke. Marines scattered toward barracks and equipment lockers. Brennan walked straight toward Sarah, his face twisted with something between fury and disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. "Following orders, Corporal." "You're Navy. You've got no business in a Marine tactical evaluation." Sarah met his eyes. "Commander Hayes seems to think differently." "Commander Hayes doesn't know what he's doing putting a washed-up desk sailor in a field exercise. You're going to get hurt out there." "I appreciate your concern." "It's not concern." Brennan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's a warning. You embarrassed me yesterday, made me look bad in front of Staff Sergeant Reyes, made me apologize when you were the one out of place." His breath smelled like coffee and rage. "Whatever happens out there, whatever breaks, that's on you." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear. Recognition. She'd seen this before. Men who confused volume with authority, who treated apologies as weakness, who needed to hurt someone to feel strong. "Noted," she said, and walked past him toward the staging area. Gunnery Sergeant Maria Reyes was waiting near the equipment lockers, clipboard in hand. She looked up when Sarah approached. "Didn't expect to see you on the roster," Reyes said. "Makes two of us." "Hayes requested you specifically. You know him?" "Met him during in-processing. Didn't make much of an impression." Reyes studied her face. "He made enough of an impression to pull your file." "The real one, not the sanitized version." She paused. "I tried to access it this morning. Got a visit from the S2 intelligence officer telling me I didn't have clearance. You want to explain why a Navy chief's personnel file requires special compartmented information clearance?" Sarah's hands tightened on her equipment bag. "No." "Fair enough." Reyes handed her a laminated card with grid coordinates and rally points. "But whatever you are, Chief, you're not administrative coordination. And whatever happens in the next 5 days, Brennan's going to find that out." The staging area filled with participants over the next 10 minutes. 8 Marines, Sarah, and Commander Hayes, who showed up carrying a rucksack that looked like it weighed 80 pounds and moved like it weighed nothing. "Evolution 1, Hayes announced. 15-mile tactical movement, full combat load. Checkpoints every 3 miles with scenario-based problems. Simulated casualty drills, navigation tests. Time limit is 6 hours. Anyone who falls out gets documented. Anyone who quits goes back to their unit with a note in their file." He looked at each of them. "Questions?" Lance Corporal Park raised his hand. "Sir, what's the chief's role?" "Observer when I tell her to observe. Participant when I tell her to participate. Evaluator when I need evaluation." Hayes shouldered his rucksack. "Any other stupid questions?" Silence. "Good. Move out." The first 3 miles were easy. Marines settled into rhythm, boots hitting dirt in synchronized cadence. Brennan led the pack, pushing hard pace to establish dominance. Sarah stayed in the middle, matching stride without effort.
Her rucksack weighed 60 pounds, standard load for operations she'd run across Afghanistan and Iraq. 15 miles was a warm-up. By mile 4, 2 Marines were struggling. Hayes called a halt at the first checkpoint, a clearing marked with orange cones. "Scenario," he announced. "IED strike. 2 casualties.
One with traumatic amputation below the knee, one with suspected tension pneumothorax. Limited medical supplies. Hostile forces closing from the north. You've got 5 minutes to treat and prepare for movement. Go." The Marines froze for 3 seconds, then chaos erupted. Brennan started shouting orders that contradicted each other. Park grabbed medical supplies but fumbled the packaging. Another Marine, Corporal Vickers, tried to apply a tourniquet to the wrong location while the role player screamed about pain. Sarah watched for 90 seconds, then stepped forward. "Corporal Vickers, step back," she said quietly. "Chief, I've got this." "You're applying the tourniquet over the knee joint. It won't hold pressure. Step back." Vickers hesitated, looked at Brennan, who was still shouting about establishing security perimeter. Sarah knelt beside the role player, repositioned the tourniquet 2 inches above the knee, and applied it with practiced efficiency. Twist, lock, secure. The bleeding stopped immediately. "Brennan," she called. "Who's treating the pneumothorax?" Brennan spun around. "What?" "Second casualty. Difficulty breathing, distended neck veins, decreased breath sounds. That's tension pneumothorax. Who's treating it?" Brennan looked around wildly. "Park, you handle it." Park approached the second role player with shaking hands. Sarah watched him position a chest seal, watched him start to apply it without checking for proper exhalation, and felt 18 years of training override every instinct to stay quiet. "Park, hold," she said. "What's your first step before applying the seal?" Clean the wound?" "After that, you've got a tension pneumothorax. What's building up in the chest cavity?" Park's face went blank. "Air?" "Right, and if you seal it without releasing pressure first, what happens?" "It gets worse?" "It kills them." Sarah moved beside him. "Feel for the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line." "You're going to needle decompress before you seal. Have you done this before?" "In training, Chief, but do it now. I'll talk you through it." Park's hands steadied slightly. Sarah guided him through the procedure with calm, precise instructions. Locate the space, insert the catheter at 90 degrees, listen for the release of pressure, apply the seal during exhalation, monitor for reaccumulation. When he finished, the role player's breathing normalized. Park looked at Sarah with something like awe. "Time," Hayes called. "All casualties stabilized?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. Hayes made notes on his clipboard. "Brennan, why didn't you delegate medical treatment immediately?" "I was establishing security, sir." "There was no security to establish. This was a medical scenario. You wasted 90 seconds while your people bled out." Hayes turned to Sarah. "Chief, how'd they do?" "Corporal Vickers needs remedial training on tourniquet placement." Lance Corporal Park performed needle decompression effectively with guidance. Overall response time was too slow for a real-world scenario. Hayes nodded. "Noted. Mount up. Next checkpoint is 3 miles north." They moved out. Brennan fell back beside Sarah, his breathing harder than it should be at mile 5. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. "Learn what?" "Medical procedures. That wasn't basic first aid. That was tactical combat casualty care." "I read a lot," Sarah said. "Bullshit. Nobody reads their way through a needle decompression." Sarah didn't answer. She adjusted her rucksack and picked up pace, leaving Brennan behind. Mile 8 brought the second checkpoint and the second scenario. Building clearance. Notional compound with unknown number of hostile forces. Limited intelligence. Plan and execute within 10 minutes. Brennan immediately started sketching in the dirt, laying out an approach that looked like it came from an action movie. Stack on the door, explosive entry, flood the room with firepower. Hayes watched for 3 minutes, then stopped him. "Chief Callahan, you have thoughts on Corporal Brennan's plan?" Every eye turned to Sarah. She could feel the weight of the moment. 18 years of operational experience pressing against the cover story she'd built to escape that life. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted." Sarah knelt beside Brennan's drawing. "The plan gets everyone killed in the first 30 seconds. Stacking on the door creates a fatal funnel. Explosive entry announces your presence and removes the element of surprise. Flooding the room with firepower in an unknown structure risks civilian casualties and friendly fire." Brennan's face flushed. "So what would you do, Chief?" Sarah picked up a stick, started drawing. "Reconnaissance first. Identify entry points, windows, weak structures. Establish external security. Divide into 2 elements. One creates distraction on the primary entry, while the second breaches through a flanking position. Phased clearing, room to room, maintaining cover and communication throughout. Minimize exposure, maximize control." She drew firing positions, movement patterns, communication signals. Every detail came from operations she'd run in Ramadi, Kandahar, Mosul. She could see the rooms in her head, smell the cordite and fear, hear Torres's voice calling movements over the radio. When she finished, Hayes studied the drawing for a long moment. "Where'd you learn that, Chief?" "Joint training exercises, sir. Worked with Marine Force recon units in Virginia." "When?" Sarah met his eyes. 7 years ago, sir." Hayes smiled, and it was knowing. "Execute Chief Callahan's plan. Brennan, you're element leader for the primary entry. Park, you've got the flanking team. Chief, you observe and correct as needed." The execution was clumsy, but functional. Marines moved through the scenario, making mistakes Sarah corrected on the fly. Wrong angles on doorways, failure to clear corners, bunched up spacing that would have gotten them killed. But they learned fast, and by the end, the building was cleared without a single simulated casualty. Gunnery Sergeant Reyes pulled Hayes aside during the debrief. Sarah couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Reyes gesture toward her, saw Hayes nod slowly, saw both of them looking at her like they were solving a puzzle. Mile 12 brought exhaustion for everyone except Sarah and Hayes. 3 Marines were barely functional. Brennan's pace had slowed to a trudge, his face red and slick with sweat. When they hit the final checkpoint, Hayes called an extended break. "Hydrate, eat something. We've got one more scenario before we finish." Brennan collapsed against his rucksack. Sarah stood, watching the tree line, her mind somewhere else. She was thinking about Mosul, about the compound where everything had gone wrong, about Torres's last words. "Sarah, listen to me. You get out. You carry the intelligence. You make this worth something." Sarah had refused, had tried to stay, to fight, to die beside her team leader. Torres had made it an order. "That's an order, Chief. You go. You survive. You tell them what we did here." Then Torres had grabbed the grenade, compressed her body around it, and disappeared in fire and pressure and the sound that haunted Sarah's dreams 18 months later. "Chief." Sarah blinked. Hayes stood beside her. "You good?" "Yes, sir." "You sure? Because you looked like you were somewhere else just now." Sarah forced herself back to the present. "Just thinking about the final scenario, sir." "Uh-huh." Hayes didn't look convinced. "How's your jaw?" "My jaw?" "Corporal Brennan hit you yesterday in the mess hall. Staff Sergeant Reyes filed an incident report. I read it this morning." Sarah's stomach tightened. It was an accident, sir. That's what you told Reyes. I'm asking you directly. Was it an accident? The question hung between them. Sarah could lie, maintain the story, keep everything buried, or she could tell the truth and watch everything she'd built over the last 6 weeks collapse. No, sir, she said quietly. It wasn't an accident. Hayes nodded once. Why didn't you defend yourself? Because I made a promise to someone who died saving my life that I'd stop being a weapon. The words came out before Sarah could stop them. Hayes's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Commander Torres, he said. Sarah's breath caught. Sir? Lisa Torres, DevGru assault team leader, killed in Mosul, November 2023, during a compound raid gone bad. Silver Star posthumous, along with several other citations that remain classified. Hayes kept his voice low. I knew her. Not well, but enough. Served with her brother in Team 3 back in 2015. He told me about Lisa's team, about the intelligence specialist who carried her body 3 miles through enemy fire to prevent capture and desecration. Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. I pulled your real file, Chief. The one that requires SCIF access and special compartmented information clearance. Took me 2 days and 3 phone calls to admirals I haven't talked to in a decade. Hayes paused. 18 years with DevGru. 73 confirmed kills across 4 continents. More classified citations than I could count. You're not administrative coordination. You're one of the most decorated operators in special warfare history. Was, Sarah said, forcing the word out. I was. I'm done with that now. Are you? Yes, sir. Then why are you out here running this evaluation like you've got something to prove? Sarah looked at him, then at the Marines resting 30 yards away. At Brennan, who'd hit her because she made him feel small. At Park, who'd learned to save a life because she taught him. At all of them, young and hungry and convinced they knew what combat meant. Because someone needs to teach them the difference between playing warrior and being one, she said. Hayes smiled. Good answer. Final scenario starts in 5 minutes. It's a hostage rescue. Limited intel, ticking clock, high consequences for failure. Brennan's in charge. You're going to watch him make mistakes. Then you're going to decide whether to let those mistakes stand or whether to step in. He met her eyes. Choose carefully, Chief, because what you choose tells me whether you're really done being operational. He walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone, with a choice she'd thought she'd already made 18 months ago in Arlington, standing over Torres's flag-draped coffin. The final scenario assembled in a clearing marked with tape and cones. 3 role players sat bound, simulating hostages. Hayes briefed the scenario. Terrorist cell holding American civilians. Intelligence indicates execution planned in 60 minutes. Rescue team has to extract all 3 hostages without casualties. Corporal Brennan, you're in command. Plan and execute. Clock starts now. Brennan tried. Sarah had to give him that. He organized his team, assigned positions, attempted tactical planning. But panic crept into his decisions. He kept changing the plan mid-execution, confused speed with urgency, forgot basic principles like establishing security before entering the kill zone. At minute 30, Sarah watched him send 2 Marines into a crossfire position that would have gotten them killed immediately. She opened her mouth to correct him, then stopped. This was the choice Hayes had given her. Step in and be the operator she'd been for 18 years, or stay quiet and let Brennan fail on his own. Torres's voice whispered in her memory, "You survive. You make this worth something." Making it worth something meant teaching, meant using what she'd learned so others didn't have to learn it the hard way. Sarah stepped forward. "Brennan, stop." He turned, fury and relief fighting across his face. "Chief, I've got this." "No, you don't. Your 2 Marines are walking into a fatal funnel. Pull them back." "They're establishing entry position. They're establishing a body count. Pull them back, now." Brennan hesitated, then called his Marines back. Sarah moved to the front, her training taking over like breathing. "Listen, hostage rescue is about control, not speed. You control the approach, you control the entry, you control the room. Park, your primary entry with me. Vickers, your security. Everyone else maintains external perimeter." She sketched positions in dirt, moving on instinct drilled into her across 100 similar operations. "We move in phases. Breach, clear, secure. No heroics, no improvisation. By the numbers." They executed her plan. It worked flawlessly. All 3 hostages extracted, 0 casualties. Textbook precision. When it finished, the Marines stood breathing hard, looking at Sarah like they'd seen something they couldn't quite name. Hayes made notes on his clipboard. Gunnery Sergeant Reyes stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "Mount up," Hayes said. "Final 3 miles back to base. Move out." They walked in silence, exhaustion settling over everyone like weight. Sarah's mind was somewhere else. She'd crossed a line, stopped hiding, started teaching, used skills she'd promised to bury. Torres would have approved, Sarah knew that. But knowing didn't make it easier. They reached base as the sun set, turning California sky the color of blood and promise. Hayes dismissed the Marines with orders to report tomorrow at 0800 for day 2. As the formation broke, Reyes approached Sarah. "There's someone here to see you," she said quietly. "Who?" "Didn't give a name, just said to tell you she'd flown in from Coronado and doesn't have much time." Sarah's stomach dropped. Coronado. Naval Special Warfare Command. Only one person would fly from Coronado to see her. Rear Admiral Catherine Marlowe stood near the command building, still in dress whites, ribbons gleaming in dying light. When she saw Sarah, she smiled, and it wasn't friendly. "Hello, Chief," Marlowe said. "We need to talk about your retirement." Sarah followed Admiral Marlowe into an empty briefing room that smelled like stale coffee and decades of classified conversations. Marlowe closed the door, locked it, and turned with eyes that had sent operators into denied territory for 20 years. "You're not retired," Marlowe said. "Ma'am, your paperwork, says medical administrative leave, pending final separation. That's not retirement, Chief. That's limbo." Marlowe's voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed without question. "And limbo ends when I say it ends." Sarah felt her hands start to shake. She clasped them behind her back. "I served 18 years. I did my time. I kept my promises." "You kept half your promises. You survived Mosul. You got the intelligence out. You prevented the attack on Kabul that would have killed 200 Americans. Marlowe stepped closer. "But you didn't keep the promise Torres made you make. You remember what she said?" Sarah's throat closed. She remembered. Torres bleeding out in her arms, grenade fragments shredded through her body armor, eyes already glazing but still focused. "Tell me what she said, Chief." "She said..." Sarah forced the words out. "She said, survive. Make it worth something. Don't waste what she bought me." "And hiding at Camp Pendleton filing paperwork is making it worth something?" "I'm not hiding." "You're absolutely hiding. I've read Hayes' evaluation reports. You ran that hostage scenario like you were back in Ramadi. Taught those Marines procedures they don't teach at infantry school. Showed competence that only comes from doing it for real, in places where mistakes mean body bags." Marlowe's expression softened slightly. Torres died so you could live, Sarah. Not so you could pretend to be someone you're not. Sarah felt something crack in her chest. I can't do this anymore. Can't operate, can't be the weapon. Every time I close my eyes, I see her grabbing that grenade. See her body coming apart. See myself carrying what was left through 3 miles of hell because I couldn't leave her for them to desecrate. I know. You don't know. You weren't there. You didn't watch your team leader choose death so you could breathe. Didn't spend 72 hours wondering if dawn would come or if you'd die in some compound that doesn't exist on any map. Marlo was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Operation Phantom Blade, November 2023. Mosul Compound Raid. 8-person DevGru element inserted to eliminate HVT coordinating attacks against U.S. forces. Mission compromised when local militia surrounded the compound. Your element leader, Commander Lisa Torres, made tactical decisions that saved 4 operators, including you. She received the Navy Cross posthumously. You received a classified citation you can't tell anyone about. Marlo paused. I was the one who approved that mission, Sarah. I sent Torres and her team into that compound. So yes, I do know. Sarah's legs felt weak. She sat down hard in a chair that scraped against linoleum. The evaluation continues tomorrow, Marlo said. 48-hour field exercise. No sleep, continuous operations. Commander Hayes designed it specifically to test decision-making under extreme stress. He's going to push those Marines until they break. Why are you telling me this? Because he's going to push you, too. And when you break, and you will break, Sarah, everyone breaks eventually, the truth about who you are comes out. Your real service record, your real experience, everything you've been hiding for 6 weeks. Marlo's voice gentled. I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now, submit your retirement paperwork, disappear into civilian life, and spend the next 40 years wondering if you wasted what Torres bought you. Or stay. Finish the evaluation. Let those Marines see what an actual operator looks like. Then come back to Coronado and teach the next generation how to survive. I can't teach. I'm broken. You're not broken. You're grieving. There's a difference. Marlo moved toward the door. Hayes starts the exercise at 0400. You've got 8 hours to decide whether you're done hiding. Choose carefully, Chief. Because Torres is watching. And she didn't die so you could quit. Marlo left. Sarah sat alone in the briefing room with fluorescent lights humming overhead and ghosts pressing close. She didn't sleep that night, just lay on her rack staring at ceiling tiles while her mind replayed Mosul on endless loop. Torres's voice on the radio calling contacts. The compound walls closing in as militia forces surrounded them. Ammunition running low, water running out. 60 hours becoming 70. Then 72, waiting for extraction that kept getting delayed because air support couldn't get through enemy air defenses. Then the final assault. Militia fighters breaching the compound, Torres grabbing the grenade someone had thrown. Torres's eyes meeting Sarah's. Torres saying 3 words that still echoed 18 months later. Go. That's orders. Sarah rolled out of her rack at 0330, pulled on her uniform and walked through darkness toward the staging area. Commander Hayes was already there, looking like he hadn't slept either. Didn't think you'd show, he said. Almost didn't. What changed your mind? Sarah thought about Torres, about promises made and promises kept, about the difference between surviving and living. Someone died so I could be here. Figured I owed it to her to stop wasting that. Hayes nodded. Good answer. Mount up. We move out in 30. The Marines assembled in darkness, looking half dead already from yesterday's 15 miles. Brennan's eyes were red-rimmed. Park moved with the careful precision of someone whose legs hurt. Vickers looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. 48 hours, Hayes announced. Continuous operations. Navigation exercises, tactical problems, simulated combat scenarios. No stopping except for scenario execution. No sleep. Limited water and food. You fail, you go home. You quit, it goes in your record. He looked at each of them. This is where we separate people who talk about being warriors from people who actually are. Questions? Silence. Outstanding. First objective is 8 miles northeast. Move out. They moved through darkness with red lens flashlights and exhaustion already settling into bones. Sarah stayed in the middle of the formation, her body running on autopilot built from 18 years of operations where staying awake meant staying alive. By hour 6, Brennan started making mistakes, small ones at first, wrong heading on the compass, miscalculated distance. Hayes corrected him without comment, just marked notes on his clipboard that would follow Brennan through his career. Hour 12 brought the first scenario. Simulated ambush. Role players with blank ammunition opened up from a tree line. Marines scattered, tried to establish security, failed basic contact drills. Sarah watched Brennan freeze, watched him forget every procedure he'd been taught, watched panic override training. "Corporal Brennan," Hayes called over the gunfire. "What's your first action?" Brennan's mouth opened, closed. His hands shook on his rifle. "Brennan, answer the question."
Return fire, sir?"
"Wrong. First action in an ambush is..." Silence. Sarah couldn't watch this anymore.
"Get off the X," she said quietly. "Break contact, move to covered position, then return fire."
Hayes looked at her. "Chief Callahan just saved your life, Brennan. Remember that." The scenario ended. They moved out immediately, no rest, just relentless forward movement through terrain that wanted to break them. Hour 18, Sarah started seeing things that weren't there. Torres walking beside her, the compound walls materializing between trees, muzzle flashes that belonged to a different firefight in a different country, 18 months dead and buried. She forced her eyes forward, controlled her breathing, counted steps until the ghosts receded. Hour 24 brought another scenario. Building clearance in darkness, limited intel. Brennan tried to take charge again, his judgment deteriorating with exhaustion. He sent Marines into crossfire positions, forgot to establish security, made decisions that would have gotten people killed. Park pulled Sarah aside. "Chief, he's going to get us hurt. Then take command." "I can't. He outranks me." "You think rank matters when people are dying?" Park stared at her. "You've done this before, for real, haven't you?" Sarah didn't answer. She moved to the front, intercepted Brennan before he could give another dangerous order. "Stand down," she said. "Chief, this is my scenario, and you're failing it. Stand down or I'm calling Endex and telling Commander Hayes you're combat ineffective." Brennan's face twisted with rage and humiliation. "You don't have authority." "I have the authority of someone who's actually cleared buildings with live enemies shooting back. Now stand down." He stepped back. Sarah took over, ran the scenario with precision that came from doing it in Ramadi and Kandahar and Mosul. The Marines executed flawlessly under her direction. When it finished, they looked at her with something approaching reverence. Gunnery Sergeant Reyes approached during the debrief. "Chief, can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "How many times have you done that for real?" Sarah met her eyes. "I don't know. I stopped counting after 20. Reyes's expression shifted. "You're DevGru, aren't you?" Before Sarah could answer, Hayes called them back to formation. "Mount up. Next objective is 6 miles west. Move." Hour 30 brought hallucinations. Sarah saw Torres clearly now, walking beside her, talking in that calm voice she'd used during operations. "You're doing good, Sarah. Teaching them right. Making it worth something." "You're not real," Sarah whispered. "Doesn't make me wrong." The hallucination faded. Sarah forced herself forward, one step at a time, running on fumes and muscle memory. Hour 36. Brennan collapsed, just stopped walking, sat down hard, stared at nothing. Hayes called a halt. "Corporal Brennan, on your feet!" Brennan didn't move. His eyes were glazed, unfocused. "Brennan, that's an order." "Can't, sir. Can't do this anymore." Hayes made a note on his clipboard. "You're combat ineffective. Return to base. Staff Sergeant Reyes will escort you." "No." Brennan's voice cracked. "Please, sir. I can keep going." "You're done, Corporal. This evaluation is over for you." Brennan looked at Sarah with something between hatred and desperation. "This is your fault. You made me look weak. Made me fail." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. "I didn't make you do anything, Brennan. You failed because you're not ready. Might never be ready if you keep blaming other people for your shortcomings." "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just some washed-up Navy clerk who got lucky." "Corporal." Hayes's voice cut like a blade. "Shut your mouth before you say something that ends your career. She doesn't belong here. She's faking everything, pretending to be something she's not." Brennan stood, swaying with exhaustion. "I want to see her service record. Want proof she's actually qualified to evaluate me." Hayes looked at Sarah. "Chief, you want to show Corporal Brennan your qualifications?" Sarah's hands trembled. This was it. The moment everything came apart. She could refuse, maintain the cover story, let Brennan go home believing she was a fraud. Or she could tell the truth and watch 6 weeks of careful hiding collapse in seconds. She thought about Torres, about promises, about making it worth something. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. Hayes pulled out his phone, made a call. "Admiral Marlowe, we're ready." "Yes, ma'am." "Understood." 20 minutes later, Admiral Marlowe arrived with a projection screen and laptop. The remaining Marines assembled in a clearing, exhausted and confused, and watching Sarah like they were trying to solve a puzzle. Marlowe set up the equipment without ceremony. "What I'm about to show you is declassified as of 0600 this morning, specifically for training purposes. It remains sensitive. Anyone who discusses it outside proper channels faces charges under the Espionage Act. Understood?" The Marines nodded, too tired to do anything else. Marlowe pressed a button. The screen lit up with an aerial view of a compound in Mosul. Date stamp, November 17th, 2023. "Operation Phantom Blade," Marlowe said. 8-person DevGru assault element inserted to eliminate high-value target coordinating attacks on U.S. forces in Kabul. Mission was compromised when local militia forces surrounded the compound. Radio intercepts indicated 50 enemy fighters closing on the position. She paused. "This footage comes from a Reaper drone providing overwatch." The video played. Sarah watched, her breath coming shallow, as the compound appeared on screen. Thermal images showed 8 friendly personnel inside, surrounded by dozens of enemy fighters. "The element held that compound for 72 hours, Marlowe continued, rationing ammunition and water, fighting off assault after assault, calling in airstrikes danger close to their own position. She pressed another button. The video zoomed in on a thermal signature treating another wounded operator. "This is Chief Petty Officer Sarah Callahan, cryptologic technician assigned to the element for intelligence support. Watch what she does next." The video showed Sarah performing battlefield surgery on a wounded SEAL.
Advanced tactical combat casualty care under fire. Precise, controlled, exactly what she'd taught the Marines yesterday. Brennan's face had gone white. The element leader was Commander Lisa Torres, Marlowe said. DevGru Assault Team Commander with 14 years operational experience. When enemy fighters finally breached the compound, Commander Torres made a tactical decision. She pressed play on another video clip. This is what sacrifice looks like. Sarah closed her eyes. She couldn't watch Torres grab that grenade again, couldn't watch her body compress around it, couldn't watch the thermal bloom that meant Torres had stopped being a person and become a casualty. Commander Torres died, saving 4 operators, including Chief Callahan, Marlowe said quietly. Chief Callahan carried Torres's body 3 miles through enemy territory, under continuous fire, to prevent capture and desecration. She then extracted the intelligence that prevented an attack on Kabul that would have killed over 200 American personnel. Marlowe paused. Chief Callahan has 73 confirmed kills across 18 years of classified operations. She has more combat experience than everyone in this formation combined. She holds instructor-level qualifications in tactical combat casualty care, close quarters combat, urban warfare, and small unit tactics. She was awarded the Navy Cross for actions in Mosul, but it remains classified. Her entire service record before 6 weeks ago is classified at the special compartmented information level. The silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. Marlowe turned to Sarah. "Chief, show them your shoulder." Sarah's hands shook as she pulled off her uniform top. The tank top underneath exposed her left shoulder blade. The DevGru trident tattoo caught light, the number beneath it visible to everyone. 73. Brennan made a sound like he'd been punched. "That's what an actual operator looks like," Marlowe said. "Not someone who talks about being a warrior. Someone who's lived it, in places that don't exist on maps, doing work that will never be acknowledged publicly, carrying teammates who died so others could live." She looked at Brennan. "You hit this woman in a mess hall because she made you feel small. You accused her of faking qualifications because you couldn't accept that someone you underestimated might actually be more capable than you. You failed this evaluation because you lack the humility to learn and the courage to admit when you're wrong." Brennan's legs gave out. He sat down hard, tears streaming down his face. Sarah pulled her uniform back on with shaking hands. She could feel every eye on her, could feel the weight of 18 years pressing down, no longer hidden, no longer deniable. "Chief Callahan," Marlowe said, "I'm offering you a position at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado, training instructor for the next generation of SEAL operators. Full billet, your own curriculum, teaching what you've learned so others don't have to learn it the way you did." She paused. "Commander Torres died believing you'd use what she bought you. This is how you do that." Sarah looked at the Marines watching her, at Park, who'd learned to save lives because she taught him, at Vickers, who'd corrected his mistakes because she showed him how, at Brennan, broken and humiliated, and maybe finally understanding what strength actually meant. She thought about Torres, about promises, about the difference between hiding and healing. "Yes, ma'am," Sarah said. "I accept." Marlowe smiled. "Outstanding. Report to Coronado in 2 weeks. I'll have your orders processed by Friday." She turned to Hayes. "Commander, finish your evaluation. I've got a flight to catch." She left. The Marines stood in silence until Hayes finally said, "Mount up. We've got 18 more hours. Move out." They moved.
Sarah walked beside Park, who kept glancing at her like she might disappear. "Chief," he said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you. For teaching us. For not giving up on us even when we didn't know what you were." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Something that had been tight since Mosul, since Torres, since the 3-mile carry through hell. "You're welcome," she said. Hour 40, Sarah's hallucinations returned, but this time Torres was smiling. "Told you," Torres said. "Make it worth something. You're doing that now." "I'm trying." That's all anyone can do. Try, survive, teach. Make the next generation better than we were. "I miss you." "I know. But I'm not really gone, Sarah. I'm in every life you save by teaching them right. Every operator who comes home because you showed them how. That's what I bought. That's what you're giving back." The hallucination faded. Sarah kept walking, one foot in front of the other, carrying Torres forward into whatever came next. Hour 42 brought the final scenario, and Hayes made it brutal. Hostage rescue in darkness, with multiple casualties, limited ammunition, hostile forces closing from 3 directions. The remaining Marines were barely functional. Park's hands shook so badly he could barely hold his weapon. Vickers kept blinking like he was trying to wake himself from a nightmare that wouldn't end. "You've got 15 minutes, Hayes said. 3 hostages, 8 hostile forces, unknown number of civilians in the structure. Plan and execute. Chief Callahan, you're in command." Sarah's exhaustion evaporated. Command meant responsibility, meant lives depending on decisions she made, meant being the operator she'd tried to bury for 6 weeks. Her hands steadied, her vision cleared. 18 years of training took over like breathing. "Park, your primary entry with me. Vickers, external security. You two," she pointed at the remaining Marines, corporals whose names she'd learned during the march. "Flanking positions, north and south. We breach in phases." "I call the movements. Nobody deviates. Nobody improvises. Questions?" "No, Chief." "Good. Move." They executed with precision, Sarah-shaped through verbal commands and hand signals. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, exactly as she'd done it in Ramadi when Torres was still alive, and missions still made sense. The hostages were extracted without casualties. The scenario ended in 12 minutes. Hayes made notes, his expression unreadable. "That's how it's done. Chief, where'd you learn to run an operation like that?" Sarah met his eyes. "Ramadi, 2019. Similar scenario. 4 hostages, 12 hostile forces. We got 3 hostages out alive. Lost one to a sniper we didn't see until too late." The Marines stared at her. Park's mouth hung open. "You lost someone?" he asked quietly. "Lost a lot of someones over 18 years. You don't forget them. You carry them. You make their deaths mean something by teaching others how to survive." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "That's the job. Not just completing missions. Making sure the next generation learns from your mistakes instead of making their own." Hayes checked his watch. 6 hours remaining. Mount up. Final push to extraction point. Move out. They walked through darkness that felt heavier now, weighted with exhaustion and truth. Sarah's legs moved on autopilot. Her mind drifted to Arlington, to Torres's funeral, to the moment she'd decided to stop being operational. But teaching was operational in its own way, just different targets. Ignorance instead of enemies. Survival instead of eliminations. Hour 45, Park collapsed. Sarah caught him before he hit the ground. "I'm done, Chief. Can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think." "I'm not strong like you. Not trained like you. I'm just a regular Marine who learned tactical combat casualty care under pressure, who executed a building clearance that saved 3 hostages, who kept moving when his body said stop. Sarah held his gaze. That's not regular, Park. That's what strength actually looks like. Not muscles, not volume. Doing what needs doing when everything hurts and quitting would be easier. Park blinked back tears. My dad was Force Recon, served in Fallujah. He died when I was 12. Heart attack from all the stress he carried home. His voice broke. I joined to make him proud, to be like him. But I'm not. I'm weak, and I failed, and your father would be proud of what you did today. I'm proud of what you did today. Sarah helped him stand. Now finish this. Finish it for him. Park wiped his face, nodded, kept walking. Hour 47. They reached the extraction point. Dawn broke over California mountains, turning sky pink and gold. The Marines collapsed in a heap, too exhausted to care about military bearing. Hayes addressed them with a voice that carried, despite the exhaustion everyone felt. 48 hours of continuous operations, no sleep, limited food and water. You've been tested in ways that separate people who want to be warriors from people who actually are. He looked at each of them. 4 of you made it. That's better than most evaluations. You should be proud. Sir, Vickers said, his voice rough. What about Brennan? What about him? Does he get a second chance? Does he? Vickers stopped, seemed to gather courage. He made mistakes, sir. Big ones. But he's still a Marine. Still our brother. Doesn't he deserve a chance to learn from this? Hayes looked at Sarah. Chief, your thoughts? Sarah thought about Torres, about second chances and redemption, and the difference between punishment and teaching. Torres had believed people could change if someone cared enough to show them how. Depends on whether Brennan wants to learn or wants to keep blaming others for his failures, Sarah said. If he wants to learn, he deserves the chance. If he wants to keep being who he was yesterday, no amount of second chances will help. Hayes nodded. We'll find out. Index, exercise complete. Return to base. Debriefs start at 1400. Dismissed. The Marines scattered toward vehicles. Sarah started walking, felt her legs threaten to give out, forced them steady through will that had carried her through worse. Chief! She turned. Gunnery Sergeant Reyes stood behind her, expression complex. I owe you an apology, Reyes said. I saw you get hit in that mess hall, and I thought you were just another sailor who'd take the abuse because you didn't know how to fight back. I was wrong. You weren't wrong. I did take it. But not because you couldn't fight back. Because you chose not to. Reyes paused. That takes more strength than hitting back ever would. I should have seen that. Sarah felt something warm in her chest. Acceptance, maybe. Recognition. Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. Maria. Call me Maria. Reyes extended her hand. And if you ever need someone to talk to who understands what it's like being a woman in this world, you've got my number. They shook. Sarah walked back to her barracks, feeling less alone than she'd felt in 18 months. She showered, changed into clean uniform, and tried to sleep. Her body wanted it desperately. Her mind wouldn't cooperate. Kept replaying Mosul. Kept seeing Torres grab that grenade. Kept hearing Torres's last words about making it worth something. At 13:30, someone knocked on her door. Sarah opened it to find Corporal Jake Brennan standing in the passageway, face pale, eyes red. Chief, can I talk to you? Every instinct screamed to say no, to close the door, maintain distance, avoid the conversation that would hurt them both. But Torres would have said yes. Torres always believed in redemption. "Come in," Sarah said. Brennan entered like he was walking into an execution. He stood at attention, hands trembling. "At ease, Corporal." He relaxed slightly, but couldn't meet her eyes. "I came to apologize. For hitting you. For the things I said. For—" His voice cracked. "For being exactly the kind of Marine I always hated. The kind who uses rank to hurt people. The kind who mistakes cruelty for strength." Sarah sat on her rack. "Why'd you do it?" "Do what?" "Hit me. Call me washed up. Treat me like I was nothing." Brennan's face twisted. "Because you made me feel nothing. You walked past me in passageways like I didn't exist, like my rank didn't matter, like the 3 years I've served didn't earn me basic respect." He finally looked at her. "My whole life I've been second best. Second to my brother who made Marine Raider. Second to my father who thinks muscles and volume mean you're a man. Second to everyone who actually deployed to combat zones while I pulled training rotations and convoy security." His hands clenched. "And then you show up. This quiet Navy chief who doesn't say much or demand anything or try to prove she's tough. And somehow you still made me feel small just by existing. I couldn't handle that." Sarah understood. God help her, she understood completely. "You know what Commander Torres told me once?" "No, ma'am." "She said the people who are actually dangerous don't need to prove it. Don't need to yell or threaten or hurt others to establish dominance. They're dangerous because they've been tested in ways that proved what they're made of, and they came out the other side still human." Sarah met his eyes. "You wanted to be dangerous, Brennan. Wanted people to see you and think, that's a warrior. But you went about it wrong. Being a warrior isn't about hurting people weaker than you. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. About making hard choices under pressure. About maintaining humanity when circumstances make it easier to be a monster." Brennan's shoulders shook. I failed the evaluation. Failed myself. Failed what being a Marine is supposed to mean. You failed one evaluation. That's not the same as failing permanently. Sarah stood. You want to know what happens next? What? You submit a formal written apology to me through official channels. You request remedial training in leadership and tactical decision-making. You stop blaming others for your shortcomings and start doing the work to become better. She paused. And then, if you mean what you're saying right now, you submit a package for Marine Raider selection. Not to prove anything to your brother or father, to prove something to yourself. Brennan's eyes widened. You think I could make it? I think you could, if you're willing to do the work. If you're willing to be humble. If you're willing to learn instead of pretending you already know. Sarah moved toward the door. But that's on you, Brennan. I can't make you better. Only you can do that. He straightened. I'll submit the apology today, and the training request, and... He hesitated. I'll think about Raiders. If I submit a package, would you write me a recommendation? Ask me again in 6 months. Show me you've changed. Show me you've done the work. Then maybe. Yes, Chief. Thank you, Chief. He left. Sarah closed the door and sat heavily on her rack. Her hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear or rage or exhaustion. From something else. Hope, maybe. The possibility that Torres's death had bought more than just Sarah's survival. Had bought chances for people like Brennan to become better.
The debrief at 1400 was straightforward. Commander Hayes reviewed the evaluation results, documented performance ratings, made recommendations for future training. When he finished, he asked Sarah to stay behind. Admiral Marlowe called, Hayes said once the room cleared. Your orders to Coronado are processed. Report date is 2 weeks from Monday.
You'll be teaching advanced tactical combat casualty care, close quarters combat, and small unit tactics to Bud/S candidates and newly assigned team members. Sarah's stomach tightened.
That's a lot of responsibility, sir.
You've earned it. 18 years of operational experience, more combat time than most instructors combined. You're uniquely qualified. Hayes paused. You scared?
Terrified?
Good. Fear means you understand the stakes, means you won't take it lightly. He handed her a folder. These are preliminary curriculum outlines. Review them. Make changes as needed. This is your program, Chief. Your knowledge. Your lessons. Teach them the way you wish someone had taught you. Sarah opened the folder. Inside were course descriptions, training timelines, evaluation criteria. All of it waiting for her to fill with 18 years of hard-won knowledge. Commander Torres would be proud, Hayes said quietly. Sarah's throat closed. She managed to nod. One more thing. Hayes pulled an envelope from his pocket. This arrived for you this morning. Courier delivered it from Coronado. Sarah took the envelope. Her name was written in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it carefully, pulled out a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Torres in her dress uniform, smiling at the camera, looking alive and healthy and nothing like the broken body Sarah had carried through 3 miles of hell. The note read, Chief Callahan, my wife died doing what she loved, leading operators who trusted her judgment. She spoke about you often, said you were the best intelligence asset she'd ever worked with. Said if anything happened to her, she wanted you to have this photo to remember her as she lived, not as she died. She also wanted me to tell you something. Don't waste what I bought you. Teach them better. Make it worth the cost. She believed in you. I believe in you. Do us proud. Rachel Torres. Sarah's vision blurred. She pressed the photo against her chest and felt something break open inside her. Grief she'd been holding for 18 months. Tears she'd refused to cry because crying meant accepting Torres was really gone. Chief? Hayes's voice came from far away. You need a minute? Sarah couldn't speak, just nodded. Hayes left quietly, closing the door behind him. She cried then, really cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from places she'd kept locked since Mosul. Cried for Torres, for the 4 operators who died in that compound, for every life she'd taken across 18 years of classified operations, for the woman she'd been before violence became routine and death became statistics. When the tears finally stopped, Sarah felt lighter, emptied out, but clean, like something toxic had been drained away. She looked at Torres's photograph. Torres smiled back, frozen in a moment before grenades and sacrifice, and the 3-mile carry that had defined Sarah's last 18 months. I'll make it worth it, Sarah whispered. I'll teach them better. I promise. She placed the photograph carefully in her personal effects, along with the note from Rachel Torres. Then she walked outside into California afternoon that smelled like possibility. Staff Sergeant Maria Reyes found her near the base gym. Chief, you okay? Hayes said you might need company. I'm good. Better than good, actually. Maria studied her face. You sure? Because you look like you've been crying. I have been. First time in 18 months. Sarah managed a small smile. Turns out crying doesn't make you weak. Just makes you human. Damn right. Maria fell into step beside her. So, Coronado in 2 weeks. You ready for that? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Good answer. You need help packing, finding a place to live, navigating San Diego traffic that makes no sense whatsoever? You call me. Marines take care of each other. Even Navy Marines. Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign, but good. Thank you, Maria, for everything. Thank me by coming back and guest lecturing sometime. These Marines need to hear from people who've actually done the work, not just people who read about it in manuals. Deal. They walked in comfortable silence until Maria said, Brennan came to my office this afternoon, submitted a formal apology to you, and requested remedial leadership training. He told me he was going to. You think he means it? Or is this just covering his ass? Sarah thought about Brennan's face during their conversation, about the shame and determination warring behind his eyes. I think he means it. Whether he follows through, that's on him. Fair. Maria stopped walking. Can I ask you something personal? Depends on the question. The woman you carried out of Mosul, Commander Torres, you loved her? Sarah's breath caught. Not like that. She was my team leader, my mentor, the person who taught me how to be operational without losing my humanity. She paused. But yeah, I loved her. The way you love someone who saves your life in every way a person can be saved. Maria nodded like she understood completely. Then honor her by being for your students what she was for you. Teach them, protect them, show them how to survive and stay human. That's the best memorial you can give her. Sarah felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Her phone buzzed. Text message from Admiral Marlowe. Housing secured in Coronado. Base billeting. Senior enlisted quarters. Move-in ready. See you in 2 weeks, Chief. Don't be late. Sarah typed back. Wouldn't dream of it, ma'am. 2 weeks. 14 days to close out Camp Pendleton, pack 18 years of memories into boxes that couldn't hold the weight, and prepare to become something new. Not a weapon, not administrative coordination hiding from the past. An instructor, a teacher, someone who'd transform pain into purpose and survival into lessons. Torres would have approved. Sarah looked at California sky turning pink with sunset and felt something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Not quite peace, that would take longer, but direction, purpose. The beginning of understanding what Torres had bought with her life. Not just Sarah's survival, the survival of every operator Sarah would teach. Every life saved because Sarah had learned the hard way and passed that knowledge forward. That was worth a grenade, worth a 3-mile carry, worth 18 months of grief and hiding and trying to be someone she wasn't. 2 weeks until Coronado. 2 weeks until she stopped hiding and started teaching. 2 weeks until she honored Torres properly. Sarah walked back to her barracks, packed her sea bag, and started preparing for the life Torres had died to give her. The package arrived on Sarah's final morning at Camp Pendleton. No return address, just her name written in block letters on brown paper that felt heavier than it should. She opened it carefully, standing in her mostly empty barracks room with packed sea bags waiting by the door. Inside was a black combat knife in a leather sheath. Torres's knife. The one Torres had carried through 14 years of operations,
the one she'd used to cut through zip ties in Mogadishu and breach doors in Kandahar, and do 100 other things Sarah had witnessed across 6 years of working together. A note fell out, handwritten on paper that looked like it had been folded and unfolded many times. Chief Callahan, Lisa made me promise to give you this when you were ready to honor her properly. Not by hiding, not by grieving, by teaching. I think you're ready now. She always said the knife wasn't about killing. It was about cutting through what didn't matter to reach what did. Use it to teach them that.
Rachel. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled the knife from its sheath. The blade was scratched, worn, marked by years of hard use. Torres had sharpened it obsessively, always said a dull blade was more dangerous than no blade at all because it gave false confidence. She could hear Torres's voice explaining it. You don't carry a weapon hoping to use it. You carry it hoping you're prepared if you need it. Big difference. Sarah slid the knife back into its sheath, clipped it to her belt. It felt right there, like Torres was coming with her to Coronado. Someone knocked. Maria Reyes stood in the passageway with coffee and something that looked like breakfast but probably wasn't. Thought you might need fuel for the drive, Maria said, handing over the coffee. It's a long way to San Diego. 5 hours if traffic cooperates. Traffic never cooperates. You should add 2 hours minimum. Maria leaned against the doorframe. Brennan came by my office yesterday. Submitted his package for Marine Raider selection. Sarah's eyebrows rose. He actually did it? Actually did it. Included a letter explaining why he wanted to try. Talked about learning humility from a Navy chief who showed him what real strength looked like. Maria paused. He asked if I thought he had a chance. What'd you tell him? Told him that 6 weeks ago I would have said no. But people change if they want it badly enough. Told him to prove he wants it. Sarah sipped the coffee. It tasted like motor oil, but had enough caffeine to wake the dead. You think he'll make it? No idea. But I think trying is more important than succeeding sometimes. Trying means he's not the same person who hit you in that mess hall. Maria's expression softened. You gave him that. Gave him a reason to be better. Torres gave me the same thing once. I'm just passing it forward. They stood in comfortable silence until Maria said, You should get moving. Marlowe doesn't strike me as someone who tolerates late arrivals. You're not wrong. Sarah grabbed her sea bags, felt the weight of 18 years packed into canvas and regret. Thank you, Maria, for seeing me when I was trying not to be seen. Thank you for teaching these Marines what the word warrior actually means. Maria extended her hand. Sarah shook it, felt the grip of someone who understood combat in ways that couldn't be explained to people who'd never experienced it. The drive to Coronado took 6 hours through California traffic that made no sense. Sarah spent most of it thinking about Torres, about Mosul, about the choice to stop hiding and start teaching. By the time she reached Naval Special Warfare Center, her hands had stopped shaking and her breathing had steadied. Admiral Marlowe met her at the billeting office. Chief, you're early. Traffic was lighter than expected, ma'am. Good. Come with me. I want to show you something before you get settled. Marlowe led her across the compound to a building that looked newer than the others. Inside was a memorial wall covered with photographs. Fallen operators from every SEAL team, every conflict, every operation that had cost lives in service to missions most Americans would never know existed. Torres's photograph was there. 3rd row, center. Smiling in dress uniform, looking exactly like the photo Rachel had sent Sarah. We added her 6 months ago when the operation was partially declassified, Marlowe said quietly. She deserves to be remembered. Sarah touched the frame gently. She deserves more than that. That's why you're here. to make her death mean something by teaching others to survive. Marlowe turned to face Sarah. Your first class starts tomorrow morning. 30 candidates, fresh from BUD/S. Young, cocky, convinced they're invincible because they made it through the hardest training in the military. She paused. Your job is to show them they're not invincible. They're just prepared. And preparation only works if they're humble enough to keep learning. Sarah's stomach tightened. What if I can't do this? You can. You've been doing it for 18 years, teaching operators to survive in denied territory. This is the same thing, just different environment. Marlowe's expression softened slightly. Torres believed in you. I believe in you. Now you need to believe in yourself. That night, Sarah lay in her new quarters, staring at unfamiliar ceiling and thinking about the 30 candidates she'd meet tomorrow, thinking about Brennan and Park and all the Marines she'd taught during the evaluation, thinking about whether teaching was enough to balance 73 lives taken across 18 years of classified operations. Torres's voice whispered in her memory. Killing doesn't define you. What you do after, that's what matters. Sarah closed her eyes and waited for dawn. The training facility at 600 was exactly what she expected. 30 candidates in PT gear, all under 25, all radiating confidence that came from surviving BUD/S and believing that meant they'd survived the worst the military could throw at them. Sarah stood in front of them, wearing simple instructor uniform with Chief Petty Officer insignia and nothing else. No decorations, no ribbons. Nothing to indicate who she was or what she'd done. She let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I'm Chief Callahan, she said finally. I'm going to teach you tactical combat casualty care, close quarters combat, and small unit tactics. Some of you are probably wondering why a woman is teaching combat courses to SEAL operators. Anyone want to voice that concern now? A candidate in the front row raised his hand. He was big, muscular, with the kind of swagger that came from being the best at everything he'd tried. Chief, no disrespect, but what qualifies you to teach us? Most of us just survived BUD/S. We've been tested pretty hard already. Sarah recognized the tone. Confident without being aggressive, questioning without being insubordinate. The same tone Brennan had used before everything changed. What's your name, candidate? Anderson, Chief. Prior service? No, Chief. Came straight in. Sarah nodded. BUD/S is hard. You should be proud you made it through. But BUD/S tests your physical limits and mental toughness. It doesn't teach you how to keep your teammates alive when everything goes wrong in denied territory. She paused. I spent 18 years embedded with DevGru conducting operations you won't read about in any official record. 73 confirmed kills across 4 continents. More classified citations than I can count. I've done the work you're training to do. I've survived situations that killed people more prepared than you are right now. That's what qualifies me. The room went completely silent. Anderson's swagger evaporated. Now, Sarah continued, I'm going to teach you the difference between surviving training and surviving actual combat. The difference between being tough and being smart. The difference between confidence and arrogance. She looked at each of them. Some of you won't make it through my course. Some of you will fail because you're not ready. Some will fail because you can't set aside your ego long enough to learn. That's fine. Better to fail here than fail in Mosul when your teammates' lives depend on decisions you make under fire. She pulled Torres's knife from its sheath, held it up for everyone to see. This knife belonged to Commander Lisa Torres, DEV-GRU Assault Team Leader. 14 years operational experience.
She died in Mosul, saving 4 operators, including me. She grabbed a grenade that should have killed all of us and compressed her body around it so we could keep breathing. Sarah's voice remained steady through force of will.
She carried this knife through every operation, not because she wanted to use it, because she wanted to be prepared if she needed it. That's the difference between being a warrior and playing one. Warriors prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Pretenders hope for the best and panic when the worst arrives. She put the knife away. First evolution is advanced tactical combat casualty care. You'll work in pairs. One of you will be the casualty with simulated traumatic injuries. The other will treat under time pressure with limited supplies. You'll rotate every 30 minutes. We'll continue until everyone can perform every procedure without hesitation. She paused. Questions? Anderson raised his hand again. Chief, what happens if we mess up? You learn from it here so you don't mess up when it matters. Making mistakes in training is expected. Making the same mistake twice is careless. Making mistakes in combat is fatal. Sarah pointed to the training equipment. Pair up. Let's find out what you actually know versus what you think you know. The first 2 hours were brutal. Candidates made every mistake Sarah had seen 100 times. Wrong tourniquet placement, improper airway management, failure to prioritize by injury severity. She corrected each error with patience Torres had shown her years ago, explaining not just what was wrong, but why it mattered. By hour 3, they were improving. By hour 4, most could perform basic procedures competently. Anderson, despite his initial swagger, proved to be a quick learner. He listened, adapted, asked good questions. During a water break, he approached Sarah. Chief, can I ask you something? Go ahead. The commander you mentioned, Torres, how did you keep going after she died? Sarah recognized the question beneath the question. Anderson wasn't asking about grief. He was asking about survivor's guilt, about carrying weight that never fully lifted. I didn't keep going at first. I tried to hide, tried to pretend I could be something other than what 18 years had made me. She looked at him directly. Then someone reminded me that Torres didn't save me so I could waste what she bought. She saved me so I could teach others, so I could make her death mean something by passing forward what she taught me. Anderson nodded slowly. My cousin was a SEAL, died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. IED on a convoy route. I joined because of him, to honor him. But sometimes I wonder if I'm good enough to deserve what he died for. You honor him by being the best operator you can be, by learning everything you can learn, by keeping your teammates alive when situations go bad. Sarah's voice softened. Your cousin didn't die so you could be perfect. He died doing what he believed in. You honor that by doing the same thing, serving with excellence and humility. The training continued through afternoon and into evening. Sarah pushed them hard but fair, correcting mistakes without humiliating, teaching principles instead of just procedures. By 1800 hours, all 30 candidates could perform tactical combat casualty care at acceptable levels. Tomorrow we start close-quarters combat, Sarah announced as they secured equipment. 0600 sharp, don't be late. They filed out, exhausted but energized. Anderson stayed behind. Chief, I wanted to apologize for questioning your qualifications. That was you doing exactly what you should have done. Asking questions, wanting to understand who's teaching you and why. Sarah managed a small smile. Never apologize for asking honest questions. Just be ready to accept honest answers. Yes, Chief. Thank you, Chief. He left.
Sarah stood alone in the training facility, feeling Torres's knife against her hip and something like peace settling in her chest. Her phone buzzed. Text from Maria Reyes. Brennan shipped to Raider selection yesterday.
Looked scared and determined. Thought you'd want to know.
Sarah typed back. Thanks for telling me. He'll do fine, if he remembers humility matters more than strength. Another text came through, this one from a number she didn't recognize. Chief Callahan, this is Corporal Jake Brennan. I'm at Raider selection. It's harder than I imagined. Wanted to thank you for showing me what I needed to fix about myself. Whatever happens here, I'm better because of what you taught me. Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you graduate. And remember, warriors protect. They don't dominate. Good luck, Corporal. She walked back to her quarters through Coronado evening that smelled like ocean and possibility. Torres's photograph sat on her desk beside Rachel's note. Sarah picked up the photo, traced Torres's smile with her finger. I'm teaching them, she whispered. Teaching them the way you taught me. Making it worth what you paid.
The next 6 weeks blurred together in a rhythm of training, teaching, correcting, and watching candidates transform from cocky survivors of BUD/S into operators who understood the difference between toughness and wisdom. Anderson became one of her best students, soaking up knowledge like someone who understood every lesson might save a life someday. On week 7, Admiral Marlowe called Sarah to her office. You've exceeded expectations, Chief. Candidate evaluations are the highest we've seen in 5 years. They respect you. More importantly, they trust you. They trust the lessons, ma'am. I'm just the messenger. You're more than that. You're proof that operational experience combined with teaching ability creates something special. Marlowe handed her a folder. I'm expanding your role. You'll continue teaching, but also develop curriculum for advanced courses. I want your knowledge systematized, documented, passed forward to future instructors. Sarah opened the folder. Inside were course outlines waiting for her expertise, lesson plans needing her experience, training evolution designs that would shape operators for decades. This is Torres's legacy as much as mine, Sarah said quietly. Then make sure it's worthy of both of you. 8 weeks into teaching, Sarah received a phone call from Maria Reyes. Brennan made it through Raider selection. Graduated middle of his class. Not the top, but solid. Instructors said he showed more growth than anyone they'd seen. Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest. He did the work. He did. And he asked me to thank you. Said you gave him something his father and brother never did. Permission to be imperfect and still valuable. That night, Sarah looked at Torres's photograph and felt something she hadn't felt since Mosul. Not quite closure, that would take years, maybe forever, but acceptance. Understanding that Torres's death had purchased more than Sarah's survival. Had purchased the survival of every operator Sarah would teach, every teammate they'd protect, every mission they'd complete. Because Sarah had shown them how. 73 lives taken across 18 years. But how many lives saved by teaching others to survive? The math didn't balance, could never balance, but it meant something. Meant Torres hadn't died for nothing. Meant Sarah's survival served a purpose beyond just breathing. 3 months into teaching, Anderson approached her after a particularly grueling close-quarters combat evolution. Chief, I got orders. Deploying to undisclosed location for classified operation. Wanted to thank you before I left. Sarah's stomach tightened. Sending operators into harm's way never got easier. You ready? I'm prepared. There's a difference, like you taught us. Anderson extended his hand. Whatever happens out there, I'll remember what you said. Warriors protect. They stay humble. They keep their teammates alive. That's the mission." They shook hands. Sarah watched him walk away and felt Torres's voice in her memory. "This is what I bought, Sarah. This moment. This operator going into danger better prepared because you taught him. This is worth what I paid." Sarah touched Torres's knife on her belt and whispered, "I know. I finally know." 6 months after arriving at Coronado, Sarah received a package from Rachel Torres. Inside was a Navy Cross in a presentation case, the one Torres had earned in Mosul. The citation was still classified, but Rachel had included a note. "Lisa wanted you to have this, not because she thought you needed validation, because she wanted you to remember that sacrifice means something when it purchases purpose. You've given her death purpose by teaching others. That's the greatest honor you could give her memory. Thank you for becoming what she knew you could be. Rachel." Sarah placed the Navy Cross beside Torres's photograph on her desk. Every morning before teaching, she looked at both and remembered what she was really doing. Not just teaching tactical procedures, teaching operators how to survive and stay human. Teaching them what Torres had taught her, that being a warrior meant protecting others, not proving yourself. 1 year after arriving at Coronado, Sarah stood in front of a new class of 30 candidates, young, cocky, fresh from BUD/S. She let the silence stretch, then pulled Torres's knife from its sheath. "This knife belonged to Commander Lisa Torres," she began, the words familiar now, worn smooth by repetition, but no less true. "She died saving 4 operators, including me. She carried this knife not because she wanted to use it, but because she wanted to be prepared. That's the difference between being a warrior and playing one." She taught them, corrected their mistakes, showed them how to survive, made Torres's sacrifice worth something by creating operators who understood that strength came from humility, that survival required wisdom, that being a warrior meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. That night, Sarah sat in her quarters looking at Torres's photograph and felt something close to peace. She'd spent 18 years taking lives. Now she was spending however many years remained, giving others the tools to preserve life. The balance would never be perfect, but it was something. It was purpose. It was what Torres had bought with her death, and what Sarah would honor with her life. Teaching the next generation to be better than she'd been, to learn from her mistakes, to survive situations that had killed others, to come home and teach the generation after them. This was what making it worth something looked like. Not hiding, not grieving forever. Teaching, protecting, passing forward hard-won wisdom so others didn't have to learn it the hard way. Torres would have approved. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Honoring the woman who'd grabbed a grenade so Sarah could keep breathing, keep teaching, keep making every day count for something beyond just survival. Sarah touched Torres's photograph one more time, then turned off the light and prepared for tomorrow's class, ready to teach 30 more operators what it really meant to be a warrior.